Hi, I'm Shana Lipner Grover from Sage Country Herbs, and I'm here with Mountain Rose Herbs to talk about common medicinal garden plants. And we're going to start right here with oregano, which is such an incredibly common, it's a culinary herb, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about, is the medicine that almost every single household in the nation, if not the world, already has available. I like to talk about how we all have a relationship with plants, whether we realize it or not, because most people have culinary herb cabinet or a tea cabinet, and this one is almost always in it. There's so many different cultures that use oregano as a spice, and I think it's a really good thing to be aware of, that historically, culinary spices were not just about flavoring. They're about stimulating digestion with their aromatic compounds, and the stimulating of digestion helps with digesting of things that are a little bit tougher, you know, maybe some gristly cuts of meat or some different types of beans. And so having a lot of these really nice aromatics not only flavor our food, but they help with things like gas and bloating and these very, very common digestive ailments that are often just accepted as, oh, you know, those are just things that happen, when really there's all kinds of things that we can do about them. And the culinary herbs like oregano, it's just an easy kind of no-brainer. So once we realize we have something like oregano, this is in the Lamiaceae family, the mint family. It is, its Latin name or scientific name is Oreganum. So it's a nice one. The oregano common name and Oreganum, the Latin name, actually sounds similar, so it's easier to remember. And it's just so incredibly common. Honestly, out of the culinary herbs, a lot of herbs like oregano and rosemary have really kind of broken out of that just for flavoring food perspective, because a lot of you have probably seen oregano oil in the vitamin department in the immune section, because a lot of people will use oregano for things like a sore throat or to boost immunity, or when you have like a sinus infection. It's actually really fantastic for lung congestion. It's a great expectorant. It, of course, has antiseptic and antibacterial qualities, some antiviral qualities, so many wonderful reasons to use it. But beyond that, you don't have to spend a bunch of money in a store buying a product when you have oregano in your house, because the making of, the most common way that you buy it is oregano oil. And a lot of people like to assume that's essential oil, and it's not. It's just an infused oil. It's so easy. You take generally dried herb or new dried herb or wilted. You don't want it to be really super fresh because you don't want that water weight, but wilted or dried herb, even if you're pulling your culinary herbs out of your cabinet and you haven't used them in, like, say, a year or longer, if you open up the jar and you give it a little squish, and I'll do it here, it's just a little squish, and you smell those aromatics. And as long as you can smell those aromatics, there is some medicinal function to it. You take your freshly dried herb or very dried herb, and you put it into a jar and you cover it with oil, and make sure that you, as you watch the oil go down, it completely coats everything. You might want to put the lid on it and shake it really well, and maybe you notice that actually there's still some dried herb in there. Add a little bit more oil. You want every single bit of herb to be completely saturated with the oil. And basically you can just keep it in there. If you use a little bit of heat, be careful, don't ever burn oil. But if you use a little bit of heat, you're going to make that extraction happen quicker. But really, you can just infuse it into oil. 1 to 2 weeks. As long as you can smell that oil and you smell that oregano, it definitely has infused. Now, the other thing about this that people will say is, yeah, but is this as potent as what I could buy? It may be, and it may not be. But to me, I think a really important thing to understand is that just because something isn't 100% as potent doesn't mean that it's zero. So even if it's only 80% as potent as what you could buy, it's still functional medicine. And that is a wonderful thing. And beyond that, maybe you end up like, after 6 months, you still have, you know, a bunch of oil. No problem. You could use it on a cut. You could use it on a scrape. You could use it internally. But what you could also use it is just, you could eat it. You can make an oregano style like Italian vinaigrette by using oregano infused oil. Honestly, you can do this with anything: rosemary infused oil, thyme infused oil, basil infused oil. One of my favorite parts about using culinary herbs is maybe you don't have the things come up that you need them for. That's fine. You can use them in your cooking because they're also, all culinary herbs are essentially nutritional powerhouses. And while we don't necessarily use a lot of them, drops in the nutritional bucket slowly fill the nutritional bucket, which is a total reason to use culinary herbs on a regular basis in all different ways. You know, maybe you like to dip your bread in a little oil and vinegar. Well, how about oregano infused oil with some balsamic vinegar? It adds complexity, it adds flavor, it adds medicine. It's just a win-win-win relationship with herbal medicine, and it costs you essentially nothing. So, love oregano. There's so many different things to talk about it in general, but I think the biggest thing to understand is its effect on the immune system, on the lungs and the respiratory, and the way that you can use it in digestion with its aromatic bitterness, and ultimately that it's a relatively safe, although very effective and functional, but it's safe enough to use as a culinary herb. So that's actually what I encourage people to do the most of. Use it as a culinary herb, incorporate it into your daily nutrition. This plant right here is just about ready to burst into flower, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. The flowers are relatively small, although not the smallest in the mint family. But you can see, like when I look at this plant, all I see is potential. Like all these little flowers are getting ready. When I say potential, what I mean is when plants are in full flower, now they are calling out to their pollinators, which then brings in the pollinators, which are then going to help with the pollination, which then means that the plant is on its way to producing a seed, which is the next generation. So the most vitality that a plant has is when it is in flower. So that's what I mean by this plant is just filled with potential right now, because it's going to go to flower, and then it's going to get pollinated, and then it's going to produce the next generation. And that makes for a lot more medicine that can come out of that. So you can use it as a tea, you can infuse it into alcohol, both topical or internal. You can infuse it into oil. I've used oregano to make an anti-infective salve to use on cuts and scrapes and boo-boos. So many different ways, plenty more than just what I'm talking about right now. I've done foot soaks in oregano, just so many wonderful ways of using oregano. Okay, there's one more that actually is really valuable that is overlooked very commonly with culinary herbs, and that is of a steam. And I say this because just the other day, I had a past student send me a message saying, hey, I'm dealing with a lot of lung congestion and I'm drinking tea, but I was thinking that maybe I should burn some sage and just huff the smoke. What do you think? And I was like, no. I would recommend that you don't do that because smoke is an irritant. And while there's plenty of reasons about how to use smoke as medicine, when you're dealing with a lot of irritation, adding more irritation is not actually the answer to that. And so I recommended that they put their herbs that they were going to burn, put them into a pot of water and steam. And that steam is adding a lot of hydration and also getting a lot of those aromatic oils into the direct area where the infection lay. And that is a really key aspect about herbal medicine that's really wonderful, especially working with herbs in relationship to the respiratory system, because we can breathe them in and get them directly to the area. And that's where steam is amazing. Steam can penetrate into those sensitive mucosal membranes where smoke is going to be irritating. Alcohol could actually be damaging. You know, even tea, which is wonderful, is going right down and over, but steam can actually get and penetrate into the lungs, into the sinuses. And that is a really fantastic way to be able to help with infection moving throughout your home. You could just steam it. You don't even have to breathe it in directly. You could steam it like a potpourri in your house. So many wonderful ways of incorporating culinary herbalism. So I hope you're going to go out and be inspired to try some oregano.